The views expressed on the Nova Society are those of the panelists and guests and do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the Phoenix Research Institute or any institution which any panel member is associated. Reproduction or dissemination, other than for the purpose of education or information without the express written permission of the Phoenix Research Institute or Nova Society Media, is strictly prohibited.
Welcome back to the Nova Society. I'm your host, Dr. Brooklyn Ann Weldon, and I'm here with my panel, Dr. Scott Gershwer and Dr. Mark Bount. Today and for the next 4 days, our panel will be answering listener emails about a topic which has dominated our mailbag this past weekend. Listener emails from around the world are asking for the panel's take on the recent Zelensky-Trump Oval Office meeting. What did we think? And what might this historically awkward meeting mean? Our first question comes from Alan, who lives in Washington, D.C. Alan asks, I really don't know what to think or feel after watching the Zelensky-Trump Oval Office meeting. I know I witnessed something that I never would have believed possible from an American president. I was even more shocked when Mark's U.S. Senator from South Carolina, who has always said he supports Ukraine, flipped and basically said, we cannot ever do business with Zelensky. I'm sure the panel saw the painful exchange. I know this might be a little personal, and I would understand if you didn't want to answer, but I'll ask anyway. What were your thoughts and feelings as you each sat and watched this spectacle? Mark, would you like to start?
Yeah, my first comment is going to be, Alan, although he is from South Carolina, Lindsey Graham is not Mark's senator, just so that you know. I'm kind of stuck with him. So, it's like a shotgun marriage. Yeah. So let's just get that clear. Lindsey Graham, I don't know whatever happened to him. Feeling about it, I tell you something. It was really difficult it was painful to watch. There's absolutely no doubt about that. I was ashamed. I was absolutely ashamed that these two people, Trump and Vance, who aren't half the man that Zelensky is, just not half the man that he is, would think that this was something to do. And I give Zelensky an awful lot of credit. I heard on a lot of the talking heads on the, right-wing media, oh, yeah, well, Zelensky was yelling. No. Here's a man, English is not his first language. He is speaking to these two supposed leaders of the free world. And my comment to J.D. Vance, who said, well, you should be thanking us. Most of this stuff that came to Ukraine came through the Biden administration, not yours. I got nothing to thank you for at all. You haven't done anything. It was a shame. I mean, I guess that's the only thing. I've been saying this, so many times, and I've said it here on the podcast, and I've said it just, out when I speak in public. I don't recognize the country anymore. And the fact is that we have citizens that think that this was a good thing that happened. And I'm sorry, that's not American. And I don't really know what the hell you're thinking if you think that's American.
Yeah. So there's so much to consider here. But let's start with the ambush itself, right? Which is where most of us have seen this, because I didn't see it live, obviously. I saw the tape, and I only saw that last 10 minutes when Vance said, have you once even thanked us for, what we did? And as Mark says, most of the aid has come from them. Vance himself has said many times publicly he doesn't care what happens to Ukraine. So I'm not sure how much gratitude he's actually owed. But the fact of the matter is, if you watch the very top of the tape, and it's available on YouTube, it's almost a 50-minute conversation that they have. Zelensky comes in and says, thank you for taking the meeting. Thank you for having me. Thank you for all your help. He has thanked Trump on numerous occasions, posted on X, thank you, America. Thank you for your support. Thank you to POTUS. Thank you to Congress, the American people. So this idea that he's not grateful enough is ridiculous. He began his meeting to Congress by saying, thank you so much. Thank you for all that. Thank you. It's so too much for me. Thank you so much. I mean, how many times does this guy have to say thank you before it sinks into J.D. Vance's cement head that he's saying thank you, So that let's start with that. This was a setup. And the fact that AP cameras or other media outlets in the US were not allowed in on the meeting, but Russian outlets were, kind of tells you everything you need to know. There was an audience of one. His name is Vladimir Putin, and he wanted to see Trump and Vance attack this guy, and they accommodated him. They did it. They attacked him, whether it was what they sincerely believe or just play acting, doesn't really matter. This was for the benefit of Vladimir Putin, and the Putinistas over there were gleeful about it. Said that the United States policy is now in line with Russia's vision, which is insulting to every American. And frankly, this was the lowest. I really didn't think Helsinki could get lower, but this was lower than Helsinki, and it was disgusting. And Lindsey Graham and the rest of them that joined the Amen corner here for Trump and Vance really, really deserve nothing but scorn, with the top of the ticket being Marco Rubio, who sat there looking so uncomfortable, like he realized this is Vance's couch, and really didn't have anything to say. Has declared himself, apparently, to friends of his as being so out of the loop he doesn't know what America's foreign policy is, even though he's the Secretary of State. And it's really, my guess is it's really just a matter of time before he resigns altogether. He's powerless. He's looking like an imbecile. This can't be what he wanted.
The thing, the thing that always gets me is that the United States' foreign policy, we've made a lot of mistakes, but the mistakes we made were not out of a feeling of maliciousness. It was just out of a lot of times it was out of being arrogant, being uninformed, and sometimes just being pig-headed, and those were our mistakes. But we always could justify we were doing things for what we believe was the right reasons. This absolutely no. There's nothing here at all. It's almost impossible to think of. Scott has said before that he lost hope in the American people after the last election. And you know what? I lost hope too. Now, I always had a little bit of hope, just a little, but I don't have it anymore. I have very little hope for us because this is the path that so many people seem to want to go down. And if you want to align yourself with Russia, that's perfectly fine. That is perfectly. Then take down your American flags and fly a Russian flag, and be over and done with it. Stop hedging your bets and all the rest of it. Just fly that Russian flag proudly if that's what you want to do, because that's exactly what you're promoting here.
Yeah, I will say I didn't see coming that people would actually sign up for Titanic too, but that's what we've done, and they're not willing to admit it yet. But I think that day is coming. Nothing good is really happening right now for this country. We're going to be paying higher prices for everything. I don't know, Brooke, up where you are, you may actually get Canadian Energy and find a 25% increase in your bill. They could do rolling blackouts if they want, or brownouts in a lot of the Northeast that gets power from Canada. We've clearly, for years, Republicans have been telling the American consumer that gas prices are high because we didn't build the Keystone pipeline, and that's our pipeline carrying our gas, our oil to be refined for us, and that's just was not the case. It's Canadian oil, and now we're gonna, we FAFO'd it, and now we're in the find out stage, I think, because even before Trump spoke last night, the Commerce Secretary Lutnick was saying that they're going to tweak these tariffs to meet the Canadians and the Mexicans halfway or a part of the way in an attempt to calm the stock market down, which really had a bad day yesterday. And then Trump got up and, refused to acknowledge that during his speech. And if you look at the Dow right now, it's up a bit. Clearly, it's up on the idea that the trade wars aren't going to be as bad as they thought they would be. And that may or may not be the case.
Well, the first aspect the Zelensky. This poor man, as you said, President Zelensky, he's working in his third language. He speaks Ukrainian, Russian, and English is his third language. And yes, and this was certainly an ambush. At the end of the meeting, Trump said, "Well, that was good television." I don't remember the guy's name. Marjorie Taylor Greene's boyfriend criticized President Zelensky for wearing a inappropriate clothing, for not wearing a suit. Didn't he have a suit? Well, let's look at Elon Musk, who's in the cabinet meeting, I guess at Trump's request, wearing a t-shirt and the baseball hat or whatever it is. That's not exactly formal attire either. And Zelensky, being a wartime president, Winston Churchill wore combat fatigues when he came to the White House during World War II as a wartime president. So what Zelensky's wearing is certainly of no consequence whatsoever. He's wearing the soldier's uniform in solidarity with the soldiers.
And Brooke, if I may, also to remind people that he's at war.
Yeah, he's at war. And he has to have a 14-hour train ride to get from Kiev to wherever he's going, because there's no air, you can't fly a plane out from where he is. So he's got a 14-hour train ride one way, and then he can get on an airplane, and then he's got to come here. And if I remember correctly from my teaching English as a second language, the word costume, Zelensky mentioned that he would have a costume. I believe that the many Russian speakers, Ukrainian as well, will say costume instead of suit. So that was simply a translation word into English. What really bothered me immensely was, beyond the, you've got to say thank you and all this nonsense, was their jumping on both Trump and Zelensky and saying, well, you got no cards, and telling him that his country is in trouble when they've never been to Ukraine. Well, he knows that his country is in trouble. Where do you think he's been this whole time? And when he even tries to tell them the history and tries to tell them that even though we have an ocean, if Putin is allowed to go prancing all over the place in Europe, it will affect the United States. Then they have both Vance and Trump have the nerve to say, well, don't tell us what to feel, while they're telling Zelensky what he should and shouldn't feel and what he should and shouldn't do in his own country. It just, the whole thing, it reminded me of bullies in a playground. And of course, then they were very happy to kick Zelensky out. And to me, it makes very clear that, and I don't know what the possible purpose can be, except that Trump has got to, and now apparently Zelensky's written a letter. He was ready to sign the mineral deal, even though he needs a security guarantee, which Trump was not going to give him. And the whole purpose of the exercise and the ambush was to force Zelensky into a position where it could be claimed by both Vance and Trump that Zelensky is not ready for peace, and that he can come back when he is. And Trump, I don't know if it was during the speech, said something about Zelensky's letter, and it was nice, or whatever it was that he said. But Trump is I can tell you, he is not going to honor that letter, because Trump has already sided with Putin. Trump cannot give Zelensky support and keep Putin happy. I don't think there's anything that Zelensky can do. Trump doesn't care about the minerals, because he can get that from Putin in land that Putin already occupies. As far as Canada goes, we don't need what you have. Canada has lumber, Canada has oil. And guess what the two largest exports are material resources that Russia happens to have? Trees, lumber, and oil. And if Trump is all cozy with Putin, I think that may be what is in the back. Because look, I mean, if we're supposed to be worrying all about Greenland and Russian ships floating around and whatnot, why go antagonize Canada when there could be Russian ships floating around up there? I mean, that doesn't make any sense at all. unless the idea is going to be, well, we're going to make Canada the 51st state. Anyway, that's my view. I don't think that there was ever any intention of making a deal with Zelensky. I think the whole purpose was to put Zelensky in a position where Trump could say, well, he doesn't want peace, make himself look like he's been the victim again. And then he can say, well, Trump or Putin's always a victim, just like me. And then
that was really bizarre. That was some really bizarre stuff when he was saying that he and Putin have gone through this together.
Yeah.
There's like that very strange identification with, and it's all on Trump's side. I'm sure Putin couldn't care less.
It is.
That they're both victims of this, the wild rumor of Russia. But here's the way Trump is so clever about all this stuff, because we're talking about a deal. There's no deal. Russia invaded Ukraine. If they want to stop the war, uninvade it. Just back out and get your troops out of there. And there's the peace.
Exactly.
Putin is not going to get what he wants. I think that's something that people should be more in tune with right now. Putin has failed his objective. His objective is to wipe Ukraine off the map, and it's not going to happen. Now, is he willing to have a ceasefire, retool, retrain an army that was decimated in this war over the last 3 years, and the conscripts that are coming in now are nothing like the training that the original 700,000 troops that got sacrificed in Ukraine had? They're not crack troops anymore. They're being imported from all over the world, like North Korea and some Arab countries, and they're not up to this right now. So Putin may be calling for a ceasefire to retool and go at it again. There's certainly, as Zelensky pointed out, no evidence at all that he has any intention of honoring any deals, peace deals that he makes, or ceasefire, or keeping the ceasefires. But this idea that Trump says Putin sacrificed so much, so many boys got killed in Ukraine, he ought to keep what he took, is just an outrageous idea. That and now we're talking about making a deal. Well, there's no deal. Get out of Ukraine. That's the deal. Get out of Ukraine, and Zelensky should hold on. And if anybody thinks, besides using nuclear weapons, and I'm assuming tactical nuclear weapons rather than strategic, like wiping Kyiv off the map, that Europe can't go at Russia with Ukraine together. Russia couldn't get Ukraine by itself. How are they getting the best of the rest of Europe? It's not going to happen. Yeah, Brooke, sorry.
No, that's quite all right. I just 2 points before I forget. Or I have 1 point and a couple of questions. How likely is it, do you think, then, that we Americans may find ourselves supporting Putin with war material, weaponry, and so on? And so what do you think about the potential that we Americans will later on find ourselves supporting poor beleaguered Putin?
I mean, it'd be foolish to say no, that will never happen, because so much is unprecedented that has never happened before. Doesn't mean it's not going to happen now. So I'm not going to say never, but it would be. I mean, look, changing sides in the Cold War is a big deal. Changing sides in a hot war is a really, really big deal.
Yes.
How long do you think it'll take, Mark, before we in the United States find ourselves in that position?
I don't know. I didn't get my degree in fortune telling.
Yeah,
I really don't know. You sit back and you hope it doesn't happen. But like Scott said, there's so many things that we would have said probably 5 years ago. That'll never happen. I'm out of the prediction business now, because you can't apply logic to any of this stuff, and I don't know.
He wants to take sanctions off, and that's a big first step. So
that's a big first step. So yeah, I mean, I don't.
Is he going to buy Russian oil instead of Canadian oil? That would be a big step.
Yep, it would. It would. And as we talked about before, that would be a disastrous step for the United States. And anybody that doesn't see that's a moron. I'd rather be beholden to the Canadians, the very nice Canadians, our next door neighbors who have been with us for so very long for our oil and our energy, than I would to the Russians who have
And our
been for the
lumber.
past, huh?
And our lumber.
And our love. Yeah, but I mean, yeah. And just think. So to get it across the border from Canada costs X number of dollars. To get it from Russia is going to make it cost even more.
Yeah, well, I'm sure
It's
that
just stupid.
I'm sure that for guarantees of, people on the ground or material for the war and lifting of sanctions, that Putin will be willing to do something while he rearms and does all kinds of stuff, and they can split Ukraine between them and take all the mineral wealth and whatever. And I don't know I don't know, but I can just see the potential for this to get a lot worse than it already is. So, do you have anything more to add to Alan's wonderful question?
Oh, we lost Alan's question quite a long time ago.
No, that was the Oval Office debacle.
Oh, I know, but
Yeah.
we got off that a long time ago. That was we've devolved as we
Asked and
usually
answered,
do.
Alan.
As we always do.
We totally devolved. So no, I think Alan, there you go. I don't think any of us are happy. I think we're all embarrassed. We're all sad for the United States. And hey,
Then livid, and I feel for this poor guy. Zelensky. I mean, yeah, and
Yep.
as you say, he's at least twice the man that the others are. They're not even men; they're little boys.
And one thing I will say about Scott, when he said, there's Sat Rubio, and he was like, oh my goodness, this is JD Vance's couch. He probably was afraid of what has he done to that couch before Rubio sat down.
Oh, I hadn't thought of that.
Took you a while to catch on.
Yeah, well,
I hadn't even thought of that.
It took me a minute or two. And you notice he sat with his hands, on his lap, probably didn't want to touch anything. You don't want to get, it's kind of like going into a porn theater, I guess. But yeah. Anyway.
I have one. I do have one point though that I see you rolling your eyes, Mark.
Yes, go ahead. Remember,
No, it
I'm
has
the
to
one
do
that has
with
to edit.
no. It has to do with Alan's question.
Okay.
What do you
go ahead.
think? What do you think when Zelensky said JD instead of saying Vice President Vance? When
you notice
he said
neither
dialogue.
one of them referred to him in his proper term as Mr. President, and I'm talking about Zelensky. None of them used. If you notice the summit that was held in Great Britain afterwards, if you notice the placard, His Excellency the President of Ukraine, there was no.
Yeah, I just noticed that.
I think he probably should have called him. I don't really see an issue to it. I don't care.
I just was curious.
Let's remember, J.D. Vance is a vice president, and in the scheme of things, he's subordinate. Now, people say, "Oh, but he's an American," and no, I'm sorry.
Yeah, he is subordinate.
No, he's subordinate, and that conversation, if it was going to be had, should never have been done in front of the cameras. And
Tass, who at one time wanted to kill Zelensky. I don't know if
anybody that says back in the day when they were talking about Russian collusion, oh, there was no proof of Russian collusion. You just
there
got
it is. Yep, there it is. And moreover, for Vance to say to Zelensky, "Oh, you're going to do all this on TV or whatever." Well, Zelensky's not the one who's in charge of. Who puts cameras in that room? He's a guest in that room. So that argument has absolutely it's just not, nothing Vance does is convincing. None of his arguments are convincing. And I noticed that Putin called President Zelensky a pig, which I thought was
no, that wasn't Putin. That was the former president. That was what's his name, Scott?
Oh, Medvedev.
Medvedev, yeah.
Dmitry Medvedev. Oh, sorry. All right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Called him a pig. I thought that was horrible.
Yeah, I'm sure he got permission to do it though. So.
Oh, surely. Oh, yeah. nothing happens there without Putin's say so. And I'm sure Vance got permission to, because usually the vice president sits quietly and doesn't say anything unless given permission to do so. So that was entirely scripted.
Yep. So I guess Alan got his money's worth for this one.
I hope so. I hope so. So thank
two
you
and a half.
to all. Thank you to all our listeners, and we will be answering question number 2 from our listener email bag. And we'll see you again tomorrow. Take care, everyone. Stay safe.
The Nova Society is a production of Nova Society Media, a division of the Phoenix Research Institute. We'd like to thank our production partners, Buzzsprout, who hosts the Nova Society, Audacity, our editing partners, Apple iTunes, the largest source of podcasts and music on the internet, Spotify, the most popular platform for the Nova Society, and iHeartRadio, your source for all things music and podcasting. The Nova Society is available on all of these and other quality platforms listed in our description. We'd also like to thank all of our listeners. Without your support, the Nova Society would not be possible. If you have a question or a comment, we can be reached at nova.society.podcast@gmail.com. So for Dr. Brooklyn Ann Weldon, Dr. Priscilla Hobbs, Dr. Scott Gershwer, and all of us here at the Nova Society, I'm Dr. Mark Bound. Remember, the true power in society is knowledge. Thanks for listening, and we will see you again next time. We'd like to thank our sponsor for this episode, the Phoenix Research Group, an independent research consortium offering social-political issue solutions to NGOs and international government agencies through multidisciplinary, nonpartisan, and unbiased research. The Phoenix Research Group is a division of the Phoenix Research Institute, the producer of the Nova Society podcast.